You're live.
Hello then, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the W12 Sprint Series. Of course, we're here for week number 2 of Season 6. My name is Zach Sweeney. I've got Adam Flieger alongside me in the commentary booth. And apologies for anyone that's been watching along anywhere else. We have experienced some minor technical difficulties, but all should be good. We are into the final stages of qualifying. And as you can see, it's championship leader Mirko Bortolotti that is leading the way on a 1:28.307. For 7 number 1, for those familiar with the championship, we're here in the TCRs at Long Beach. A very tight, twisty circuit in front-wheel drive cars should be a very big challenge, of course, for our multitudes of heats. Qualifying is done, and to run you through the of course, the format of how this works, the odds go into heat number 2, the evens, so P2, 4, 6, etc., go into heat number 1. The top 5 finishers of that 6-minute dash make up the evens of the feature race that we'll have in a few moments' time. But there you can see the final results. It's Mirko Bortolotti ahead of Hendrik Augustin, Ivan Ferrari, Maximilian Paul, and Marius Zug that were the top 5 overall. Florian Becker, Marcus, Martin Startman, Florian Startman, Stefano Pellegrino in the top 10, Yannick Vonenberg and Niels Langeveld the top 12. Of course, this is for the overall standings. So essentially, those that are odd, you'll see them in about 10 minutes time. For those that are even, you'll see them very, very shortly. Of course, then for those that finish inside the top 5 in Heat 2, they'll make up 2nd, 4th, 6th, 8th and 10th of the feature race field. Those then that do the same in Heat 2, those are the odds, will make up P1, P3, and so on and so forth to round off the top 10. Those that don't finish inside the top 5 of the heats will then go into a consolation race, of which then they will make up the positions from 11th down to last. But, Adam, we're about to get ourselves underway for Heat number 1. Should be a good one.
Yes, it should be. As green flag is in the air, we are down and away here.
Let's get it going then. Here at Long Beach, and a very good start it seemed initially from the front row for our starters. Heat number 1, of course, so this is going to decide the evens of the grid for the feature race, and those that are going to compete in the consolation into the first braking zone, and the side-by-side between the Civic of Bortolotti and Hendrik Augustin that are running side-by-side into the flower garden. Of course, this roundabout section that leads you around the flower beds, no one really having any major dramas going in, but there you can see Ivan Ferrari trying to fight his way forwards as well, side by side a little bit further back through the first right-hander. That is Marius Zug, I think, fighting with Florian Becker, but all good so far. A fairly clean start by Long Beach standards. As I say that, some fairly big carnage happening a little bit further back. This is Florian Startman, I think, in the Red Bull livery, Audi RS3. Some minor calamity for him. Let's take a look as to how it happened. I think just Long Beach things, Adam.
I'm thinking so. It's just that tight corner gets a little close, ends up into the tires, and then bouncing off a couple other cars, ends up sideways there. Has to get it straightened back out.
Yeah, easily done, and an unfortunate turn of events, of course, but there you can see him reversing back on to the circuit. Back to the live feed, however, unfortunately, I think a couple more incidents here for the W12 machine. That, of course, of Stefano Pellegrino, qualified P10 overall in the end, but not quite good enough. There you can see the Austrian in the pit lane, just trying to find the live pictures back for you. I think some calamity down after the hairpin as well for a couple of people, and all in all a fairly unfortunate affair in terms of the first lap, but a very heated battle here. I think we might be seeing a good old fight between a Civic and of course the Audi RS3 just in behind her, once again heading into this tight and twisty section. You can see the pair of them very, very close. I think that's Langeveld and Startman fighting for 7th place. I have to say, for Niels Langeveld, he's making up some good moves, of course now into 6th place. That, of course, Ivan Ferrari in this specific Honda Civic, but Langeveld up into 6th place overall. He's on the cusp of potentially getting himself into that all-important top 5.
As you said, the top 5 is key here for this race, and this is a tricky track or circuit. Is we go from narrow to wide sections. It's very interesting how this track is laid out, or this circuit is laid out, going from narrow to wide and back to narrow again. It definitely is a technical way of getting around through the streets of Long Beach.
Yeah, very, very difficult indeed. Of course, we follow on with Niels Langveld, who himself is under pressure from Startman. Vonneberg as well, not a million miles away. And the unfortunate thing for Langeveld is there is a good 3.5 second gap between himself and Marius Zug for 5th place. And of course, as I say, these guys are going to be rounding off or potentially these guys are the odds. I should say maybe they've been flipped around from what we were told. So the odds go first and then the evens go second, because Bortolotti leading the way ahead of Hendrik or Augustin in second. Then you've got, of course, Maximilian Paul in P3. So these guys are going to be deciding the grid for that all-important 18-minute feature race that we'll have after all of the heats as such are dealt with. 2 minutes 20 left to go, so onto the penultimate lap already, and I think we're fairly settled inside the top 5, because that's the thing when it comes to knockout races as such, isn't it, Adam? I mean, if you're inside the top 5, you've not really got much of an incentive to battle apart from track position, but as long as you're inside the top 5, you're inside the top 10 for that feature race, and at the end of the day, that's really all that matters.
Exactly. As long as you can make it into the feature and make it into that top 5, essentially into the top 10 starting grid of the feature, that's essentially where you want to be. So there really is no reason to push.
No, and it's sort of similar to the format that we see in Rennsport and on ESL as such with the with that knockout format. We saw a lot of times that drivers inside that knockout safety didn't really battle too much, because as I say, they don't really have much incentive to do so. I mean, yeah, as I say, each position effectively counts as 2 inside this top 5, because you're making up the evens or the odds. So if you can overtake someone, you're gaining yourself a couple of places of track position, which definitely can help, don't get me wrong. But with a mandatory fuel stop, it's going to be much more beneficial to make sure you are inside the top 10, just to give yourself that straight pass straight into the feature race, because you never know what can go on in that consolation race. Yeah, you might just get into it or just miss out on going straight to the feature race. You might finish 6th like Langeveld is, but if you get into an incident in that consolation race, you know, it might not be a guaranteed 11th. You could very easily start from complete dead last, and that's a risk that these drivers don't want to take. So if you're inside the top 5, at least then you've got that security of knowing that you're safe.
Exactly. The consolation race is not somewhere you really want to be. I mean, even over here in the States where I'm at, we do a lot of dirt track racing. We call our consolation to be main most of the time in dirt track. And that is not a place you want to be. You do not want to end up in those LCQs or consolation races, as it would be.
Yeah, because it just opens up a whole different kettle of fish, and as I say, so many more problems with it. 5 seconds left on the clock. Are we going to see the championship leader once again take a victory? Is the checkered flag going to be waved? I think it might well be on that run to the line. Have we ticked over onto the last lap, or is this the final one? I think it might well be, with Mirko Bortolotti still driving away, but as you can see, slamming onto the anchors. He takes victory for heat number 1 and will start the feature race. He gets himself a ticket all the way through, and it will start, of course, on the front row for the 18-minute feature race that we've got in 2 heats time. He will be joined by Hendrik Augustin, Robert Heger on the heat 1, or I should say, sorry, Maximilian Paul on the heat 1 podium. Then comes Ivan Ferrari, and then of course Marius Zug in P5. They're going to be the ones that go straight into the feature race. The rest behind that, though, unfortunately, are going to have to fight for the scraps when it comes to the consolation.
Yeah, as we said, that consolation race is not where you want to be. So hopefully these drivers here in Heat 2 can get themselves up into the top 5 of their heat.
We
think they're
definitely will
gritty.
see. They should be for heat number 2. There you can see the grid. I think this is from qualifying, but anyway, Hugo Robb, Walter Lux, and Hendrik Sturer. There you can actually see. Yeah, no, in fact, this is the grid. Robert Hedger, Gustavo Xavier, Hugo Robb, Walter Lux, and Hendrik Sturer are the ones inside the top 5. They're the ones that start inside the safe zone. Jens Fiedler, Sean Ter, Christian Albasta, Michael Derlinger, and then, of course, Ben Benagel in the top 10. Beyond that, of course, plenty other drivers, of course, with Summer and Jordanovsky in P11 and 12. But We're about to get ourselves underway for heat number 2 here at Long Beach. They're back underway, back racing once more, and a fantastic start, it must be said, from Walter Lux. He catapults himself already up into second place and potentially fighting for the lead going into turn number 1. Of course, you've got Robert Heger that leads the way, but look at the run from that Honda Civic. Now to the left-hand side of your screen, the right-hand side, of course, of the racing circuit is going to be the difficult run through. Let's see what the Audi RS3 has got in store. It's a very late move, and oh my goodness me, contact! Both of them into the barrier. A huge pile up here at the first braking zone before we head our way into the flower garden, and oh my goodness me, that is not the way that you want to start your heat 2, and could very much dampen and cast a shadow over the rest of the evening for what was initially a very good launch from Lux.
Lux had a very great start there, and it's just unfortunate that I think he pushed his luck a little too much going into that corner. We take corner number 2 and turn it into a parking lot.
Yeah, very much so. It must be free parking, because otherwise there's not really much incentive to do that. Unfortunately, yeah, just everyone cascading into the side of them. And unfortunately, because it wasn't really the fault of Lux, more Heger just being a little bit too eager on the brakes. And there you can see side by side once again, a couple of drivers into the next right-hander, and of course, as you might notice, there are a couple of different colours of numbers. There is the overall championship and then the silver championship. So the silvers are fighting for their own separate championship, sort of like a Ricky's Cup or an AM Cup, if you will. But they also do fight for the overall, so there are incentives to actually challenge those that are in the full overall championship. They can still do fairly well in either. But we tick off lap number 1. What a very chaotic lap number 1 it was. Hugo Robb now leads ahead of Hendrik Sturer. Then comes Dillinger, Summer and Ablasa, the top 5. But Xavier, Jordanovsky, Benagel, all very, very close. In fact, Xavier falling down a couple of places. But this is what we want to see. That 5th place is going to be so hotly contested, because that is the difference between potentially starting inside the top 10 and potentially not.
As we got Ablasa, Christian and Marinko here at that cutoff point, as you're talking about, that top 5. We have Marinko trying to get up there and battle for that 5th position as we're coming. I got to learn these corners. I'm not that great at learning corners here on the road courses, but a lot of great racing going on.
Yeah, everyone keeping it nice and clean. Of course, don't go anywhere after this race. We have got plenty more left in store for you. Side by side just ahead, I think that might well be in the fight for 3rd. That's Dillinger versus Summer going into the next braking zone. In fact, no, it's not. It is. It's Dillinger versus Summer. Summer's trying to go to the outside. Let's see. Into the next left-hander. Has done exactly that. Dillinger, though, trying to keep his foot in nicely on the inside. Now into the hairpin. It's going to be very much a car park as Ablasa then gets it in. And a car park once again understeering into the barrier and causing a little bit of mayhem and carnage going on to the penultimate lap. That is unfortunate stuff, it must be said, for the likes of Summer and Dillinger, who were once secure inside that top 3, that top 5 important secure positions, and are now firmly outside of that. And that's the thing about battling. That's what we were talking about playing it safe once you're inside that top 5.
Exactly. They overshot the hairpin there, and it's very easy to do here at Long Beach, to overshoot that hairpin, especially with the front-wheel drive cars.
Yeah, and of course these cars don't have the biggest of turning circles at all, so very easy to overshoot the corner, especially when you're going side by side as well, because it effectively halves your radius of the corner. I suppose, yeah, well, it does half it. It tightens it up a lot more because you've got another car to contend with, and it doesn't let you really do much with it. The car doesn't really want to respond, and unless you completely stop the car to get it rotated, which no racing driver wants to do in their right mind, it is, of course, just a recipe for disaster, which is why Long Beach is so challenging. And I'm surprised how successful IndyCar, which we are allowed to say, by the way, back on iRacing, we are allowed to call it IndyCar once again, but yeah, just IndyCar in general, how they do so well at Long Beach, because these touring cars can barely get through that hairpin, let alone, of course, effectively the equivalent of an American Formula 1 car. Well, I know, by the way, before you IndyCar fans shoot me, I know they're not the same thing, but just for the sake of comparison, as Ter, unfortunately, getting a bit of a slow exit going on to yeah, they're close enough, it's fine. One's got, a hybrid system and an ERS, and the other's got no power steering, but it's fine. They're basically the same thing. Side by side here for the top 5, and this is going to be what Jordanovsky wants. This fight for 6th place and 5th place is separated by absolutely nothing, but it carries so much weight in the long term.
One thing that I find is the 911 of Ben. I didn't go again. Not sure if I'm saying that right. If we look at the rear tires on that, you can see that brake rotor is just glowing as he goes through these corners.
Yeah, really pushing the limits of the car. And of course the front, you'd expect it to be the front tyres as such, because of course they're the ones doing most of the work. But yeah, definitely the rear is even feeling the heat. There is a car pulled over and stopped. But we are on to the final lap of the race, and Rob and Stura seem to be fairly comfortable in securing the top 2 places in heat number 2. There they are, of course, taking home a fairly healthy chunk of points along the way. Ablasser in 3rd, but look out for that fight for 5th, because honestly, if I was Sean Terre, I'd send it. I mean, you've got nothing to lose, right? 6th place, 5th place, surely you've got to go for it.
We're getting down to the wire. You got 5 seconds left, and I'm not sure exactly where you're at on the track, but yeah, you definitely need to try to send it a little harder in a couple of these corners. Try to get that nose in underneath, or definitely get it underneath there inside, going through one of these corners to try to get that pass made.
Yeah, very difficult, but after, once again, another 6 minutes of racing action, there is your victor, the Swede, Hugo Rob, ahead of Hendrik Stura. That's the top 2, Ablasser, Benagel, and Jordanovski was the top 5. These are then going to make up the rest of the top 10 going into the feature race. And then in a few moments' time, we get the all-important, the carnage, the chaos, and the mayhem of the Constellation. Now, that should be fun, because this is purely for track position. Where you finish in this race, well, I suppose it was the same in Heat 1 and Heat 2, but directly translates into your track position. So ideally, if you want even the smallest of chances of doing well in the Server 1 feature race, you've got to win this, surely. As there is the grid for the Constellation: Niels Langveld, Sean Terre, Martin Startman and Daniel Sommer, all those that were able just to miss out on taking that top 5 spot in their respective heats. Yannick Vonenberg, Michael De Linger, Florian Becker and Jens Feidler keep each other company on row number 4. Then comes Marcus, Gustavo Xavier, Christoph Steiner, Jan Lintz, the top 6 rows, as you can see, rounded off by the Chilean driver. Behind that, we've got Philip Bergen, Walter Luck, Stefano Pellegrino, Robert Hegler, and of course Florian Startman as well. Of course, a couple of drivers in there that potentially don't deserve to be. I'm sure what they'll be thinking in their own heads, determined, of course, based off their insane pace, particularly sort of Lux and Hegler, who are very, very strong in their respective heats, but unfortunately had some issues. Now they're going to have to take the driving seat and try and catapult themselves to at least have a chance, maybe a top 10 finish in the feature race, but they've got to win this if they want to at least be on the fringes. The 5 red lights will come on, and we'll come racing again for the final, of course, of the 3 heats that precede the feature. Back underway once again at Long Beach for 5 minutes of racing, and it's absolute carnage already. Multiple cars going 3 wide, but the fight for the lead right here, the one that determines 11th place on the grid, 3 wide immediately. We've got Langveld, Terre, and also Daniel Summit into the mix, but side by side I think it's going to be settled out by the Hyundai taking the reins out in front, side by side as well. A little bit further back, more mayhem in the background as 2 wide, I think about 3 deep going into the flower garden they go. Bit of contact between the pair of them as they run their way through, but so far fairly clean, Adam.
Fairly clean, a little bumping and grinding going on back here towards the back middle section of the pack. Now we get one into the wall. Still keeping it pretty clean though, for the most part. Nobody completely sideways and making a parking lot out of Long Beach yet.
Yeah, so far so good. Let's touch wood, and hopefully that is going to be a theme that remains true for the entirety of the 5 minutes. We've got Summit fighting with Vonenberg. That's for 4th place, so not much separating really there. Also this fight here, and again, as I say, each position that you make up in this race is an extra position you can start further forward in that feature race, of course with a mandatory fuel stop along the way. So how is that going to affect the strategy of that feature race? Pit stops and track position, all important here at Long Beach, it must be said, Adam. I mean, if you can time your pit stop really nicely, get a lap in clear air, you could probably gain a good couple of places in that feature race. So strategy and circumstance, it could make up for a bad heat and a bad qualifying if you're able to really time that fuel stop well.
Most definitely. As we like to call it in other leagues I'm in, we call it the money stop. If you can get that pit stop down and out of the way, get into clean air, and get back on pace, you could potentially pick up a couple spots.
Simple as that, really. Of course, with how difficult it is to overtake here at Long Beach, if you can have a lap in clear air, gain that time on aggregate, and then find yourself past, should have some fairly good implications. Of course, plenty of racing yet to come. This is only server 1, by the way. We've still got plenty more to come over the course of the next probably a couple of hours or so. Let's have a look as to what's happened between a couple of drivers. This is Walter Lux once again, maybe running into a couple of issues into the hairpin. Side by side just ahead, and a small tag sends them round, backs you up, and well, the pace is there, but unfortunately the luck isn't, and the Lux has run out unfortunately for the Austrian, and that is not going to be the way that he would have wanted to end off the consolation race, and just gives him so much more hard work to do in the feature.
As we see them break, I still find it interesting. You're saying about how these are front-wheel drive cars, but it's the back rotors. I'm seeing a few drivers really glowing and got them brake rotors really hot on the rear end of these cars, trying to get them to go through these tight turns.
Yeah, they have to use the rear brakes a lot just to even get a sort of some rotation. Really is how you sometimes have to drive these front-wheel drive cars, is by just manipulating the brake balance, manipulate the weight shift, just to really point a lot on the front. Doesn't leave a lot for the rears, so the brakes are doing a lot of the work to keep the rear end planted, and will then of course begin to heat up. Side by side just ahead, by the way. Of course, as you can see, this is just in behind Vonneberg, so I think Gustavo Xavier, Florian Becker, that's this fight just in behind. Bit of a train forming as well amongst them, with 1 minute left to go. So we are on the penultimate lap of this consolation race, so let's see who's going to be the ones to come out on top. There's the number 5 machine. Of course, that's Martin Startman battling away with Sean Tower. Apologies, by the way, if we do get the names wrong. The live timing is a little bit funky. So it can be a little bit difficult to tell some people apart, but all in all, the racing itself speaks for itself. On to the final lap. Let's see if there can be some sense. The Audi RS3 goes in, but a bit too hot, and it's such a danger zone, really, that hairpin, isn't it, Adam? I mean, it's an overtaking opportunity, but you've got to be so careful.
Yeah, you definitely have to be so careful going through that hairpin, as you said. With that hairpin, it is a great overtaking opportunity, but if you send it in too hard or you don't get that car rotated enough, you turn that hairpin into a parking lot, because there is just not room to maneuver.
No, and it's so hard to react as well, and the car doesn't really want to react either, so it just makes things even more difficult for you, and just adds to the turmoil, and just adds, as we say, sort of that car park effect of drivers that close up onto the back of them and then have nowhere to go, and then the drivers behind them close up and have nowhere to go, then blamber all the way down to the back of the field. If the mess doesn't clear up soon enough, it can be a very difficult affair. But all in all, a good consolation race, and a very good one driven by Niels Langveld.
He's doing a great job out front in that number 10 machine. I believe he's driving a Hyundai, but I'm not sure. I could be saying that wrong too. I don't know.
No, you're good. You're good. You got it. That is the, I believe that's the Elantra. I don't know. One of them is a bit more long, like this one, and then one's a bit more like a Civic as such. But there is the Flying Dutchman, of course, in that Hyundai, Hyundai, whichever way you prefer to say it. I watched the advert, so I say Hyundai anyway. We've got Niels Langveld crossing the line. He's going to be the victor of the consolation race, and then line up on the grid in P11. Behind that, of course, we've got the likes of Sean Tert, and then Daniel Sommer, Vonneberg, then we've got Pleshberger, Javier, etc., all the way down to Steiner, who will make up the final place on the grid, going into that feature race, as I say, with a mandatory fuel stop. So the heats are done, Adam. We've set the grid. Now we get to look forward to a real long 18-minute sprint race.
I'm looking forward to it. The drivers have definitely seemed to warm up to the track. I think there's a couple of them that still need to work on their braking zones per se, but really they're doing an excellent job for not having a lot of practice like other leagues. I know I've had the pleasure of working with, they, like we've said it before, they only get 15 minutes to a half hour to practice this track. They don't know the track until 15 minutes before the session even opens, when they draw between different cars and different tracks. So it is interesting to watch how these drivers do overcome and adapt to the changing conditions that they deal with, every race, because they don't know the car, they don't know the track, and probably some of the best racing I've seen on a road course in a long time.
Yeah, and of course we were touching on that while we were having technical difficulties. Of course, those now watching on the W12 YouTube channel won't know, but of course those that are unfamiliar with the format, the car track combination for Server 1, which is the one that we're in right now, this is the heat format into the feature race, gets its own car track combination, of course drawn from a selection of cars and tracks. So we've got the GR86s, the Porsche 992, the FIA Formula 4, the Toyota GR86, the touring cars, and a couple of others as well that can be drawn for Server 1. And then basically pretty much every road course out on iRacing at the moment, in the sort of the track combination that goes with it. Then of course we go into Server 2. That's going to be amongst a different format. So we'll go into an 17-minute qualifying, into an 18-minute sprint race, into an 18-minute feature race. So a little bit different format. And also we'll then have a draw for another car track combination that can be chosen from prototypes. Well, I think they're all prototypes in fact, apart from the Super Formula. So LMP3, LMD8 track combination to go with it. So as Adam rightly said, they don't have a lot of time to practice, which I think is a good thing. It forces adaptability, and to go from a car that's slow and front wheel drive and a real challenge to drive, to then a different beast entirely in the form of a rear wheel drive hyper performance car. As such, the prototypes and the top level of downforce racing is a big adjustment to make quickly.
It's definitely a huge adjustment. I wouldn't call it just I'd call it a huge adjustment that you got to make between jumping from these touring cars into, like you said, the beasts of the other cars that they can choose from, or that are potentially in the draw for race number 2, or, session 2, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, of course we'll throw to a break after this race and sort everything out, and then we'll be back, of course, for race number 2. There is the grid, by the way, for the feature race before we head our way into 18 minutes of racing. It's championship leader Mirko Bortolotti ahead of Hugo Robb on the front row. Hendrik Augustin, Hendrik Stura at 3 and 4 ahead of Maximilian Paul in P5. Christian Ablasser takes pole for the silver ahead of Ivan Ferrari and Ben Benagel ahead of Mariusz Zug. Markino Jordanovski, the top 10, the final finisher of those outside that qualified from the 2 heats. Niels Langveld, winner of the consolation in P11, and there we go, back underway for the feature race. 18 minutes on the clock, and it's side by side immediately for P2. Hendrik Augustin getting himself ahead of the Swede of Hugo Robb, and potentially maybe having a run. It's a long run towards the first braking zone, and you can see immediately the Italian, the championship leader of Bortolotti, having an offensive, huge carnage and chaos in the background, but into the first braking zone for the first time, and a huge send from the Honda Civic. Fairly decent start, getting himself ahead of Hugo Robb, but after that, not really much to tell beyond that. He's fighting away with Ivan Ferrari. That's for 5th. A fantastic bit of racing on display at the moment, and still plenty more to come all the way down the 27 car field that we've got. The Civic looking to the right hand side, that's Ivan Ferrari, but the long way round for the Audi keeps his foot in really, really nicely here. We've also got some more battling into the final sector. And there you can see, headed the way by the 998 of Christian Ablasser. That's the number for P8, and a big concessionary effect. Let's see how they negotiate the hairpin for the first time, and well, to no surprise, it's not very well.
Now we get the number 10 of Niels trying to get it spun back around after being spun around there in the hairpin. That's going to set him back quite a bit here in this first stage.
Yeah, going to be tricky to make much places out of this, and a shame, because all that hard work through the heats and the consolation now potentially gone to waste. Already lost a couple of drivers from this already, some big names as well. Robert Heger, Jan Vonenberg, Niels Langveld, the winner of the consolation, Martin Startman, Florian Becker as well in there, which is not great at all. Smoking engine as well from the rear end, of course this of Ben Benagel, in 22nd from Cologne, and that is really not the way that you want to start things off, and just cast a shadow over the rest of the evening. That's going to hamper his confidence potentially going into server 2.
It's gonna be interesting to see how it does, how its driving styles change between this car and the next car. As I think he just blew it up completely there. So tough break for him, as he did great through his heat race, getting in position. I'm not exactly sure if he missed a shift or what exactly happened for that car to blow up the way it did.
Yeah, usually you see it with a lack of downshift protection and going down the gears too quickly. Of course, the lower gears, gears 1, 2 and such, have higher torque, so you can spin faster, but when you're already going so fast and you immediately go into that lower gear, the engine spins too much. But I think nothing to do with engine revs and more the fact that he's just completely carted himself into the barrier. A huge shunt after outbraking himself, and unfortunately Ben Bunagel is going to be experiencing a fair loss of power after that and not be getting very far in this race at the moment. It's at 25th of only 20, I think only 25 runners, 24 runners even. I think he's in the pit lane and potentially retired to repair that damage. But all in all, Bortolotti leading the way, 1.87 seconds clear of Hugo Robb. The next battle is this fight for the podium behind Maximilian Paul, because you've got Stuart, Augustin and Marius Zug. Of course, 4 Germans, 3, 4, 5 and 6, all battling for that podium place.
All battling indeed for that final podium position, that third spot. Great battle going on to navigate their way through that hairpin turn.
Yeah, fairly clean from all involved. Fastest lap being put in by Maximilian Paul, even quicker than that of the championship leader Bortolotti. So very quick lap times being put in. Hendrik Augustin beats that, and then again beaten by the silver driver of Ivan T Ferrari. Of course, 1:27.8 now the quickest lap time. The only driver into the 27s, or actually the only one of 3, with Marius Zug and Augustin making up the rest of that very prestigious list of drivers that are very, very quick. Of course, assisted with slipstream and things as such, but all in all, a very impressive time, and just goes to show the sheer competitiveness of this field and how eager Ferrari is to close back in on that train.
He's definitely trying to close in on it, as that battle for third place seems to be heating up quite a bit.
It does indeed. People fighting ahead, of course, and just wanting to get as many positions as they can. A nice little move on the inside. Marius Zug just wanting to stay with Augustin as best he can. Doesn't really want lap traffic to play too big of a factor. Of course, with Stura running it ever so slightly slow. Not to say that Stura's lap traffic or anything like that, but it looked like it as such. Now Ferrari is putting him under a little bit of pressure. Let's see if Ferrari's going to fight him side by side. He's definitely no stranger to some bold moves. We saw that going into turn number 1, into the hairpin. It's so easy to get caught out by the driver in front of you braking earlier than you are, and you saw there Ferrari had to take a little bit of an avoiding action.
Definitely had to take a little bit of evasive action as he got to the gas a little sooner than Hendrik. But all in all, great racing going on here for this position as we're watching it on screen right now.
Side by side into the first braking zone. Nicely done from Ivan Ferrari, showcasing his pace in these touring cars here at Long Beach. Up now into the top 5, but don't forget there is a mandatory fuel stop along the way. They're not in Formula 4 and they're not in GT3 machinery, so these guys are going to have to stop for fuel at least once. So how do you split it up? Do you take it half and half? Do you go maybe for 6 minutes, have a quick first stint, and then maybe take on a little bit more fuel for the second? How do you weigh up sort of that weight distribution across the race? Or do you just, honestly, if it was me, I'd just play it safe and go half and half, surely?
Well, that'd be the way I would battle it out, is half and half, but I'm also seeing drivers pitting already, and I'm wondering if that fuel window is open, and some of them might pit as soon as that fuel window opens. So there's definitely strategy playing out pit-wise on when do you really want to stop for that fuel stop.
Right, yeah, and you know, is it circumstance? I mean, for Bortolotti at the moment, he's in the driving seat, obviously, literally, because obviously, why? But also metaphorically in the sense that he can choose when he comes in. He's got no pressure from those around him. He's not in any traffic. He's not being slowed down. He has full sort of flexibility in how he approaches this. Whereas if you get a driver like Augustin or Ferrari or Stura who are in that pack, they have to come to a decision, because how long can they stay fighting amongst this train of cars, slowing themselves down, when they can come into the pit lane, take their fuel stop, get some clear laps under their belt, and maybe go for that undercut or respective overcut if they stay out even longer.
That's exactly what we're saying. We're not sure what's going through these drivers' mind. When do we pit? When's that fuel window open? I noticed I saw a couple of them come down pit road already, drivers that are closer to the back. So I'm guessing the fuel window's open, or else I wouldn't understand why they were coming down unless they have just that much damage from catching a wall or something.
Or they just sort of cut their losses, come in for pit lane damage, and then also take their mandatory pit stop as well. Of course, don't go anywhere after this race. We still have the entire run through of Serving 2, a whole different format shake-up to go through. Of course, with what is going to be 54 minutes of racing. Into the pit lane comes, that is, of course, Hendrik Stura just in the background. He's making his way down pit lane. Ivan Ferrari as well. I think at some point will be coming in. Jordanovski also into the pit lane. Here is the fight, actually. I beg your pardon. It's not Stura into the pit lane. It's not Ferrari into the pit lane, but they are battling. This is for 5th. The Honda Civic on the inside, once again, keeping that 5th and trying to stay ahead of the 63 machine of Hendrik Stura. Of course, in that very Simpson livery. Hyundai looking very beautiful, of course. And with 8 minutes 30 seconds left to go, still a while, but we are now into the second half of this race, and the battles, they seem to be heating up.
Battles are heating up as the laps are winding down here, as the time's ticking down. That's another different format than I'm normally used to, as I'm normally counting laps. I'm counting laps down. I'm not really watching a timer tick down, per se, as much as it is the lap. So it's a little bit different format than what I'm used to, but definitely still giving us the racing action as the drivers themselves are aware of that timer. You never know where that timer is going to run out, really.
Yeah, and we saw in race Heat 1, really, with how close it can be. I mean, they crossed the line with only a or they missed an extra lap by only a couple of seconds or so. So, can be really close with the timing, and it might be a case of you fueled up expecting it to end on this lap, but in fact the leaders crossed the line to get an extra lap as such. So then you have to save fuel for a whole extra lap, and it can really disrupt the strategy. And that's why we see so often sort of in endurance racing and anything really that's under a clock as opposed to a lap, because yeah, you get a rough idea of how it's going to be, but you can never be certain of when the race is going to end effectively. So you're at the mercy of the timing of the leader as to when he crosses the line. So Bortolotti could cause a bit of an upset for a couple of these drivers' races, but nothing can be taken away from him. He is absolutely flying out in front, 2.6 ahead of the rest of the field, but a good little fight here. This is for the podium between Maximilian Paul and Hendrik Augustin.
Definitely the battle for third is heating up as we're coming down in this corner here, little right-hand corner between the 99 and the 71. I think the 71 is definitely feeling the pressure.
I would be inclined to agree. I mean, of course you would, wouldn't you? If you've got any driver behind you at all, you start to feel it. You start to be mindful of it. You start to be conscious of the fact they're breathing down your neck, and it can force you into mistakes and into the pit lane, in fact, actually. So making no mistake of pulling in for his mandatory stop. Same too for Mirko Bortolotti. Now into the pit lane to take the mandatory stop with just 6 minutes to go. So it's going to be a really short one, because of course the later in the race you stop, the less fuel you have to put back into the car, and of course you can choose how much fuel you start the race on. So effectively it's free time. If you can fuel up the car more in the early stages, however, a huge mistake there. Did you catch it? He missed his pit box. He had to go back in, and that could be costly in that fight for third.
Definitely could be costly. You never want to see a driver miss their pit stall, especially when time means so much on these race courses.
Yeah, time is everything, and especially when they're only separated, as you say, by fractions of a second, it can be very difficult to minimize those mistakes. But something as trivial as coming into the pit lane can have such big consequences. It was a small mistake, an honest mistake, one that we've all done. And if you don't hold your hand on your heart and say that you've done it, then you're lying to not only us but also yourself. A little bit wide there, I think, potentially from one of the back markers. And but yeah, an easy mistake to make. As I say, one that we've all have done at some point. In comes Hugo Robb very late on in the race. Again, as I say, it's effectively free time because you're minimising the amount of time you have to spend in the pit lane because you've got less fuel to put in to get to the end of the race, unless, of course, they mandate a certain amount of time you have to be in the pit lane stationary for. But I don't think that is the case. So we've got Robb and Ferrari into the pit lane, and both of them will then be on their merry way straight after, but effectively, or potentially, up an extra place because of Paul's mistake.
Hendrick now takes over that top spot. And I don't think Hendrick's come in yet, has he?
I don't think so, no, because he's 30 seconds ahead of Mirko Bortolotti, and there's no one that's going to be 30 seconds ahead of Mirko Bortolotti. So I think we are still waiting for Hendrik Augustin to come into the pit lane, the 99 machine, and I think he will. Looking at the pit stop times for those around, and Mirko Bortolotti 4.73, probably about say 20 seconds to, or maybe 25 seconds to channel your way through the pit lane. Probably looking for Augustin to come out, hopefully for him in second, but potentially directly in that fight for the podium.
That would be the game plan that he would most likely want to try to shoot for, would be, as here he comes to the pit lane right now. Hopefully he don't overshoot his pit stall, as that could be very costly for him if he does so.
Yeah, this is the make or break moment. This is the do or die. Everything effectively comes down to this. Hendrik Augustin into the pit lane. How much time is he going to lose? What position is he going to spit himself back out into? 3 minutes on the clock. I think just 3 laps to go. 2 at the line. Right at the end of the pit box as well, just tucking in behind the iRacing safety car. He's in, he's going to fuel up, and once again he's back out. It's a race again, all the way to the pit exit. Where is everyone else? There is Mirko Bortolotti in the Honda Civic. He's put his foot to the floor. Could he lose the lead with Augustin's insane strategy? Where is the 99 going to be spat out? I don't quite think he's going to make it. Bortolotti takes the lead once again, but where is the Audi RS3? Hugo Robb, he's in fact going to join side by side with him, potentially in turn 1. But cold tyres, and of course having to take it all the way to the pit exit line, puts an end to that battle. Augustin then settles in third. All in all, not a bad position to re-enter this race in.
No, I think that strategy is going to help play out for him to get that third spot, as we are winding down here with just a couple more laps to go. As you said, we got about 2 minutes left on the clock. All in all, Hendrick did a very well job getting in, getting out. Got just enough fuel that he needs to finish this out. Comes back out in third spot. Hugo there in second.
Running really nicely, the Swede. And just having a fairly consistent race, of course, winning Heat 2. And running really nicely ahead of the rest of those in his class. Of course, a very difficult job to do. Started second. He's on course to finish second with 1 more lap left to go here at Long Beach, before we then tick our way into a whole new kettle of fish in terms of a new car, a new track combination as well. Bortolotti then sends us round for one final time, and you have to you have to respect this man. I mean, not only is he coming into this race as the championship leader, so of course his 2 previous races, or two previous servers, I suppose, 2 previous rounds coming into week 2, not only were they sensational to have a 10-point lead in the championship, but also to then do it on the bounce, to showcase that consistency across new cars, across new tracks that you've not really had much time to practice for. is mightily impressive for Bortolotti.
It very well is. He's definitely showing his skill as a driver to be able to bounce between the cars that he raced last week, the tracks that he raced last week, to a completely different ball game this week, and we still don't know where session 2 is going to be. We don't know where we're catching the flight to yet.
We don't. No, that's the awkward thing. And these drivers, surely that's going to be a thought in the back of their minds at something like, where are we actually going racing? Also, a fight for second. Augustin, I think, has been able to close up and pass Rob for second place with just one corner in this race left to go. What a move that could potentially be. Hugo Rob losing that second place, down a place from where he started. It's been a fight all the way through, but Augustin potentially on those on that lighter car to the end. Very nicely done. But Mirko Bortolotti is going to cross the line, extend his championship lead and take victory here at Long Beach for the feature race. What a race it's been for the Italian. They have Hendrik Augustin and Hugo Rob on the podium. Very good race indeed. And what a way to round off Server 1.
That's a great way to round up Server 1. Definitely a great victory there for the 92 machine. Great racing. It was really great to watch drivers that can run road courses, because I know for me, I can't run road courses. But to actually see the racing play out, it was a great race to watch and really enjoyed.
Really enjoyable indeed. And of course, we'll run you through the final results as soon as we get a moment to. But of course, there you can see the finishing order on the left-hand side of your screen. But we hope you are all enjoying watching along at home. Of course, you can't say hello in the YouTube chat because, for unfortunately some reason, the chat is disabled. But the viewers at home, of course, if you are enjoying. My name is Axwin. I've got Adam Flieger alongside me in the commentary booth as well. And what a race it has been, or races. Excuse me, it has been for the 4 that we've had so far. Of course, the drivers are heading their way into the new draw chat where they'll find out their new car and their new track to take to. But after 18 minutes, there are the feature race results. It's Mirko Bortolotti, Hendrik Augustin and Hugo Rob. The top 3 that are taking to the final finishing order. Maximilian Paul, Ivan Ferrari with a sensational run to finish in the top 5. Daniel Sommer, Robert Higa, Yannick Vonneberg, Marco Jordanovski, and Mariusz Zug in the top 10. Walter Lux, after what was a very unfortunate heat and a very unfortunate start to this race, rounds off in P11, limiting the damage, I suppose, in terms of points. Christian Ablasa, Gustavo Xavier, 12th and 13th, ahead of Florian Startman. Christoph Steiner, the top 15, and Niels Langveld, the winner of the consolation race, only 16th. Stefano Pellegrino, Philip Ergran, and Jan Lintz ahead of Sean Terre for the top 20 places. And those, of course, the final driver that was on the lead lap was Jan Lintz. We'll let the rest funnel their way through all the way down to Martin Startman in P27. But final thoughts, of course, before we head to the break for Server 2, Adam. I mean, all in all, a great introduction to the series.
Yeah, I definitely great introduction for us. This is my first time within the series. Definitely would keep me coming back. Definitely get me taking the flight over the great big pond, as we would say, to come over and see the other races on that side of the Pacific or Atlantic, whatever it would be. And great racing. It's definitely enjoyed every moment of it so far.
Likewise, it's been absolutely fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. We're going to step aside for just a few moments before we're back once again for a whole new format. 17-minute qualifying, 2 18-minute races, and a whole new car and track combination. Myself, Zach Sweeney, Adam Flieger. We'll be back in just a moment.
Let me know when you want to come in live.
apologies for the slight wait, but we're back now, ready for server number 2. To kick things off, of course, still myself, Zach Sweeney, and Adam Flieger alongside me in the commentary booth. We're about to get things underway, and as you can see, we're in some gorgeous GT3 machinery here around a very iconic circuit, one that unfortunately isn't in the real world anymore, but one that definitely still serves a very important purpose in the sim. Of course, it is Oran Park, and as I say, we do take to it in some very awesome GT3 machinery. What a combination this has turned itself out into being. Fast, very, very fast sports cars around a very tight and twisty circuit. Adam, it's a very interesting combination, but, well, I suppose it's the luck of the draw. Very interesting sort of circuit, and as you can see, of course, we are into 3 minutes and 20 seconds of qualifying. I did previously say it's 17 minutes. Of course, maybe a small, ever so slight mix-up in regards to the format. I'm just, of course, going off what I've been told, but all in all, it should be really, really good. Of course, we're coming off the back of 4 really good races in Server 1. If you didn't catch them, definitely go back and have a look when we were in the TCRs at Long Beach. Feels like so long ago with how long the break was, but of course it was the championship leader of Mirko Bortolotti that was able to take victory in the end after 18 minutes of racing. He should be coming into this race with all the confidence.
Oh, it will build his confidence up, but as watching him through practice, it seems like he's struggling a little bit with this car track combination. It's going to be interesting to see if he can get it under his belt and get underway here, as Paul seemed to have a little, Maximilian Paul seemed to have a little bit more fight on the racetrack, but Niels Langeveld has a decent time set. And is it still 1 lap of qualifying? Is it still just 1 lap?
I think they're allowed as many as they can fit into the session. But again, I was told that Server 2 was going to be 17 minutes of open qualifying, so they're all out on track at the same time. That doesn't seem to be the case. Followed by an 18-minute sprint race into then another 18-minute sprint race, which, yeah, again, not entirely sure as to where the confusion lies with that. Maybe that needs to be clarified for of course, for future rounds. But at the moment, yeah, it does seem that people are only going out for 1 lap. And as it stands, it's Hendrik Augustin that leads the way. But very, very tight. Of course, it's just over a minute lap. So the lap times themselves are going to be incredibly close.
Well, between first and second, it's so tight on my timing. I can't tell who's in first, who's in second, because they are that tight. It's 0.00 on my scoring. I can't get to the 3rd spot on that decimal point.
Yeah, it is just that tight. Of course, Augustin setting a 1:04.180 as opposed to Neil Langveld's at 1:04.184. So only 4 1,000ths of a second separating those two. Of course, Langveld, winner of the consolation race in the TCRs at Long Beach, definitely showcasing some decent pace. Unfortunately, that luck didn't translate into only a 16th place in the feature, but he's back, he's firing, he's punchy for this one. Of course, we've got Mirko Bortolotti, no surprise, the championship leader, taking to the top step in qualifying, a 1:03.9, the only driver to do so. And is it any surprise that he's quick in these GT cars as well?
I think he's quick in I think he's going to be quick in anything you put him into. I know he struggled a little bit in qualifying, but I think that was, or not qualifying, but in practice rather. I think that was just him getting the feel for the car, especially after coming out of the touring car, because there's the feel and the driving of them are so different.
Yeah, they are. Of course, you know, front-wheel drive hot hatches in the form of the touring cars, so now rear-wheel drive supercars, essentially, in the form of the GT3s. Of course, GT3, it's a class that is incredibly saturated, well saturated in sim racing. I mean, it's in pretty much every sim, iRacing, ACC especially, Reg Sport now, R-Factor 2, AC. So many sims employ it, and now, well, we have our grid. Mirko Bortolotti, Hendrik Augustin, Niels Langveld, and Robert Hegge, the front four ahead of Walter Lux, getting himself inside the top 5, showcasing his pace. Hugo Jimson on row number 3 with Maximilian Paul and Sean Ter in P8. Gustavo Xavier, Florian Startman round off the top 10 ahead of Markino Jordanovski and Hendrik Sturer, the front 6 rows. About to get ourselves into the action, of course, as you can see, but those are our 12 cars as they stand. Of course, plenty more to cycle our way through, but here in Oran Park, of course, a very difficult circuit to tame and a very tight braking zone, very tricky braking zone into turn number 1. We've got Christoph Steiner, Thomas Pieber, Philip Urgran, Stefano Pellegrino, Jan Lentis, Marcus Riemer, Jens Fiedler, Ivan Ferrari, Maurice Zook, Yannick Vonneberg, Florian Becker, Christian Alblasser and Michael Dierlinger, the 25th car and final car to take to the field. Should have 18 minutes of action ahead of us. Cars sat eagerly on the grid awaiting the 5 red lights to illuminate their screens and send them off for Heat 1, the sprint race here in Oran Park. Of course, Bortolotti Augustin making up that front row. I think we're just waiting for a couple more people to load in. Marcus Riemer load onto the grid before they're free to go. There you can see the 5 red lights at the top of your screen. It's a run towards turn of 1. It's a late braking zone, a heavy braking zone at that. 5 red lights are on and we're underway here in Oran Park. A good start from the front row, of course, for Bortolotti. Not the same luck, though, being shared by Augustin. In fact, maybe it has been shared by Augustin. The 99 machine pulling alongside the Mercedes, going into turn of 1. A bit of a kink before you're slamming onto the anchors. And Augustin takes the lead of the race, going into the first braking zone. Bortolotti then has been toppled at his throne at the top and now potentially under pressure from the Porsche of Langveld in behind.
As 92 machine is definitely struggling here at the start of this race, definitely is under fire from the start. But I think it's only going to take him a lap or two to get back into the feel of his car and get back up there to battle that lead once again, as Hendrik is pulling away right at the moment in that Audi.
Very much is. He's using that pace really wisely and showcasing his talent. Of course, it's a very abundant one and has been able to topple, of course, the honestly who I thought to be invincible Bortolotti off the line. A really good getaway it must have been for that Audi R8 then, and was late enough on the brakes. He rounds off lap number 1. Still 16 minutes 50 seconds left to go. Bortolotti got his work cut out for him if he wants to chase after and re-topple that lead. All in all, settling into this race quite nicely. Bit of argy-bargy back in the background as well. You can see very long trains starting to form. The BMW pulls over to the left. I think that's Jens Fiedler defending potentially. In fact, no, it's not. It's Philip Ugran defending from Thomas Pieber going into turn number 1. The BMW tries to get the up and under, but it is going to be the Austrian and Pieber through. Simple as that. Easy peasy. Up into 14th place.
As we're watching them wind through here through this right-hand turn, up the hill, across the bridge, and through another right-hand bit. And their racing's looking really great. We're getting strung out here, a little bit more strung out than what we were at Long Beach, but I think that's just the nature of the racing circuit.
100%. Completely agree. Oran Park is a different kettle of fish entirely. That final corner especially, very easy to get caught out by as you try to carry so much speed through, and then I met with a wall on the outside. Then of course this long run towards turn number 1 and then turn 2 technically as well. Into the pit lane comes Pellegrino, or in fact actually Stur and Fiedler as well, both into the pit lane. So not entirely sure as to why they coming in so early, maybe to tick off their mandatory fuel stop. In fact, no, actually, because we are in GT3 machinery, they don't have to take a fuel stop. So this is absolutely for damage. Of course, there is a 14 incident limit before you then get yourself a drive-through, and then every 14 beyond that. So surely they've not already ticked past the incident limit. That would be completely bizarre if it was the case. I have to say, though, in the early stages, Augustine making the most of these, as I said, these early stages, nearly 2 seconds clear of Bortolotti in the first few laps.
He's got about a second, almost 2, well, definitely a second and a half over top of Mirko. But I'd have to say, once he settles in, I think he's going to end up closing that gap, battling for that lead once again. It's just going to take him a moment to get settled back in here, get settled down after that start of the race. I look for him to start battling by the end of this.
I think so. 14 minutes, 20 seconds left on the clock. There you can see the Swede of Hugo Robb. And behind him is Higa in that very nice looking Ferrari 296. So I do love the look of that Ferrari 296. A fantastically quick car in its own right, but also just one of the best looking of that GT3 fleet. I love the front end. And if there was any car I would have of the GT3 fleet, it would absolutely be that 296. It just looks mean, it looks fast, it looks like a race car, it looks like a Ferrari, especially Xavier's one here, I have to say, in the 996. It just looks like a good car, and of course a very easy car to get into and sort of feel at one with as well. So of course from that side of things, a very user-friendly car that you can get into and be fairly quick with pretty much off the bat. A couple of changes of position just ahead, as I think Hugo Robb is into the pit lane. Of course was in 8th place, now tumbling down. I'm curious as to why they are coming in though, because if they don't have to take a fuel stop, then what is the reason?
That is the puzzling part to this. Is it a mandatory fuel stop that they have to come in? Like, do these cars not make it all the way on fuel?
No, they will. Absolutely, they will. GT3 cars are really strong. Obviously, fuel efficient cars, and obviously you'll see them in endurance racing, Daytona 24 as such. They're the car that can usually go, one of the longest, upwards of an hour, potentially even more if the fuel saving is there. So an 18-minute sprint race should not make should make a dent really in their fuel capacity, unless of course they are mandated to. Bortolotti momentarily coming in. Of course, it can trick you a little bit if you exceed the track limits on the exit, but there he is, still out on track. Into the pit lane though, again, Paul in that 71 mile rate. So I think potentially there's been a slight miscommunication in terms of the rule set, because we're getting so many drivers come into the pit lane, presumably for a fuel stop, but I thought they were exempt if they were in GT3 machinery. So again, apologies for those watching at home who's thinking, hang on a minute, Zach, what are you chatting? Of course they have to make a fuel stop. What are you talking about? I apologise. It might be my fault. I'm just going off the information I was given. It's fine.
It's the information we got.
It's fine. It's not our fault. Blame James Parfitt. It's James Parfitt's fault. Everything is James Parfitt's fault. Even if it's not James Parfitt's fault, it's James Parfitt's fault, purely because we can. He's busy doing some touring cars at the moment, so not as good as our ones, of course, at Long Beach. He's off doing that, so he's not actually watching. So we can rinse him as much as we like, and we'll get away with it until he watches this back, and then I get my P45 very quickly, and don't do any more for JPP. But it's fine, because that's fine. But yeah, but like basically, hashtag blame Parfitt. Hashtag what can we call him? I don't know. I don't know. But basically, just blame James. There we go. Blame James. That'll do. Blames James. James blames. Something along those lines. Anyway. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, this is the deliriousness that's settling in after a half-an-hour break between two sessions, and now we've got still 11 minutes left to go in this race. Hazards are on for Startman into the pit lane. He stops in what is a very colourful livery, it must be said.
There are some very colorful liveries on these GT3 cars in this class. And then you got others that are just a plain, kind of a graphic collar going from front to back. And I do like the look of the Ferrari. It's such a simplistic livery. There's no major bold strokes, nothing that's overly complex like this one, for example. It's just red with the Italian flag streaked across the slide, and then some nice little thin points coming from the rear of the car forwards. It just looks nice. But then also on the complete flip side of that, you have a livery that's so overly complex, as if you've just cracked an egg and then just like traced around the edges of it and then just splattered colours all over it somewhere. And yet it still works, as if you just let your 4-year-old with a paintbrush splash paint at a canvas. But it still works. And I love that
liveries are so subjective in that they can be as simple or as complex as you like and everywhere in between, and yet they still look absolutely amazing. And honestly, in sim racing, there are some really strong liveries that, you know, sometimes are even better than their real life counterparts as such. I mean, even to the extent that with teams like BS Plus Competition and BS Turner, they have split liveries where the sim racing livery is a part of the real life livery as well, which is just amazing. So yeah, very strong, talented people in the form of these livery designers in sim racing, and they do bring out some gems.
Oh yeah, that gotta give them livery designers some shout outs. I know personally what type of work goes into some of them, and I'm not near as good as what some others are. And it's just interesting to see the different artwork that people can put into these livery designs. But August is still running away with the race here out front. Not sure what happened to Mirko.
He came into the pits a few laps ago, of course, if you remember, and has now rejoined in P10. Into the pit lane comes Hager, the 33 machine, from 4th. So I presume with the volume of cars that are coming in, we're still waiting for Augustin and Langveld to of course, make their way down into the pit lane soon. So it all depends as to the pace that Bortolotti's been putting in versus the pace that Augustin's been putting into. So of course, Augustin's last lap was a 1:03.6. His best is a 1:03.5. So incredibly consistent lap times being put in. Bortolotti's last lap was a 7.7. His best is a 3.5. He's now just done a 35.2. So a couple of really slow laps for Bortolotti, it must be said. You know what? I have doubts that if he's even going to be able to make the podium at this rate, if things continue as they are, because a couple of slow laps, I mean, they can be detrimental.
They very well could be on a track as technical and as quick as this track can be. Slow laps is not the best for any type of racing, really. As we're speaking, there comes Augustin into the pit lane.
Yeah, finally making his way down pit lane, and we have the likes of Langveld, Lux, Luke, Ferrari, Pellegrino, Ogran all into the pit lane with 6 minutes and 40 seconds left to go. So, who's next? Yeah, well, who's Bortolotti going to beat out of the pit lane effectively? There he is. Now, where is Augustin? Already back onto the circuit. He gets himself ahead of Langveld and up in the second place, but that could be a very hard-fought fight. There is Augustin, still 3 seconds ahead. So Bortolotti, it's not the end of the world, but still only second.
He's still only second and has some work cut out to him if he wants to try to catch up here to August. And as he's had such a great run, and this also just plays into Mirko's strengths as well. As we saw how well he was in the touring cars. Unfortunately, I was not around the series last week to see him perform last week, as he's, as we said, in your top points. Is he our points leader? Is that one?
Yes, Mirko Bortolotti is the championship leader. As it stands, of course, we're only 2 weeks or a week and a half into the championship, so more of a novelty than anything to have the championship lead, but definitely showcases his talent.
Definitely showcasing his talent. August still trying to hold on to that lead. I think with 5.5 minutes, a little under 5.5 minutes left to go in this race, I think Augustin might have a chance here of dethroning Mirko.
Potentially so. He's going to be, of course, vying to close that gap if he can, and most certainly will want to. As it stands, Augustin has scored. Just trying to find his Hendrik Augustin, only 9 points from week 1, but and that only leaves him 16th in the overall standings, tied with Riemann Marcus. alongside him. But in fairness to him, that gap can very quickly change. However, I have to say to Bortolotti, he's done a really good job of just staying ahead of Hugo Robb, who's 9 points behind him on 52. That's what you really have to do as a championship leader, is maintain the gap as such. He's gaining on those around him, of course, by winning the feature race and winning his respective heat and the qualifying and such. Also getting pole in this qualifying as well will boast him a point. But Augustin, he's doing everything he can in order to maybe relaunch a championship campaign. I mean, there's still a long season ahead.
Still a long season, and with that, still lots of racing to be had. I didn't quite catch the schedule, but how many races are it's the W12 Sprint Series?
Few is all I can say. Of course, they don't have an exact calendar as such, because of course they change week in, week out. So there's no like set. Right, yeah. In fact, actually, have you know what? Because I'm good. I'm not. They have actually got a calendar. Of course, it's you know, they can't give any tracks to the cars or whatever. But of course, we had round 1 3 days ago on January the 8th. We're back here again on Jan 12th. 3 days time will be round 3. On February the 5th will be round 4. Feb 12th, Feb 19th. So there's 6 rounds in total. And therefore 12 races, 12 different car track combinations over the course of the season. So we're on week 2, so this is the first third of the season done and dusted. So with it being such a relatively short season, I mean, you've got to be maximising your points from day one.
And that's what I was trying to get at. Was it's like other leagues I'm in, we got a 26-week season. So that's 26 races. We're down in a crunch here of just a few, pretty much just a couple weeks of six days trying to get a season completely done. So it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers handle switching these cars, switching tracks. They, like we said before, they don't know what track combination they're getting. They just know that today's race day, where are we flying to today? Where are we going to today? Brings it down, and like you said, it levels the playing field, doing it that way, because the drivers can't practice beforehand. They get the track and car combination. That's when they practice, is right at the beginning of these races. They don't have any extra for that, as we saw there before the qualifying of this session number 2.
Yeah. 1 minute 40 left to go then for the first race of session 2, and Augustin leads by 3.14. There we go. He did go to pi at some point, seconds ahead of Bortolotti. I was waiting for it to flicker down to 3.14 just so I could say it. But we have got 2 laps to go, I think, at the line. Depends if Bunny the Flagman's waving. I don't think he is. So 2 to go here at Oran Park, of course, before we then go again for race number 2, and then we get to round off the evening after what's been a fairly long affair in terms of round number 2 of the W12 Sprint Series season number 6. Langveld, though, chasing after Bortolotti. This fight definitely not over.
No, the podium spots for this race is not over yet. And do we have any type of invert or anything for race number 2 here in session 2?
I believe it's a reverse of the points system, so not entirely sure as to what they mean by that as such. In fact, actually no, it's the reverse top 18. So all the way down to Pellegrino will be flipped on its head. So it's going to be a really tough job for the current front runners of Augustin, Bortolotti, Langveld, and Robb to fight their way back through. That's a lot of cars in just 18 minutes.
It is just a lot of cars as we're on the last lap now, as the white flag is out here at Oran Park for Augustin. I don't know if the battle, though, for third place is over yet. I honestly want to say that if it was me, I'd probably hang off. That'd just be one less car I have to try to pass if I was Niels. That's just one less car I got to pass in the next race.
Yeah, I mean, that is true, but also it's points at the end of the day, and points matter in the terms of a championship, and, you know, one position in terms of track position can very easily change, but you won't be able to get those points back as such. So, if I was Langveld, I'd still be going for it as best I can, but into the final couple of corners is Augustine. Of course, started on the front row, but pipped Bortolotti off the line. The Aliari machine is going to start from 18th in race number 2, but he's going to seek all the glory here at Oran Park for race number 1 of session 2, of course, of the W12 Sprint Series Season 6, Week 2. And it goes the way of Augustine, joined by Bortolotti and Langveld on the podium. What a talented podium, it must be said. Of course, Audi, Mercedes, Porsche and Ferrari, 4 different manufacturers inside the top 4, showcasing the brilliant display of balance of performance and the incredible diversity of the iRacing GT3 lineup. But Hendrik Augustin, not a bad race.
Not a bad race at all. He had a great jump off the start and just continued to set the pace throughout the whole race. Now, as we get set for race number 2 here, another 18-minute sprint. Will we be seeing pit stops yet again, or do you think we're through with pit stops?
Interesting question. Yeah, not entirely sure. Of course, with how things are going, I believe it will be once again another sort of mandatory fuel stop. I don't see why that would differ from race number 1. So potentially we will see another element of strategy join the mix. We'll run you through, of course, the results as things lined up after race number 1 as soon as we can, before we then flip the top 18 on their head, and then we go again for race number 2. We're 18 more minutes back onto the clock. And as you can see, Hendrik Augustin, the German driver, taking victory ahead of Mirko Bortolotti, who still keeps that very firm lead he's got in the championship standings. Niels Langveld rounds off the podium ahead of Hugo Robb, Maximilian Paul, the top 5, Robert Higa, Sean Ter, Marius Zug, the top 8, ahead of Hendrik Sturer and Christoph Steiner in the top 10. Florian Becker, Gustavo Xavier, Jens Fiedler and Markino Jordanovski just in behind. Then comes Ivan Ferrari, Florian Startman, Philip Ergen and Christian Alblasser, the top 18 and therefore the pole position sitter for race number 2. Stefano Pellegrino unfortunately losing out on that pole position late on in the race ahead of Jan Lintz, Yannick Vollenberg, Volta Lux, Michael Dierlinger, Thomas Pieber and of course Marcus Riemer, the 25th and potentially final car as well. Unfortunately not making it to the end of this race. A couple of people unable to finish, but all in all a fairly successful first race and, well, a good demonstration of Oran Park.
Good demonstration indeed. And as I was saying to you in our break, I've raced this with the Formula V cars, and it's a fun little track. Well, I guess I shouldn't call it little track. It's a pretty decent sized track. But the circuit is just, it's fun. I really enjoyed it, and I almost want to call it a little bit of a driver's track, a little bit, in a sense of it definitely takes some finesse and stuff around some of the corners. I'm not the fastest guy out there, but it's just so fun to drive. I just enjoy it, and watching these drivers go around here, it's very enjoying.
It is. I've thoroughly enjoyed every second in the commentary booth. It's been a pleasure to be alongside you, of course, and with the insane racing that we've had put on, it's been, yeah, incredible. I think part and part due to the different format. It's very unconventional, and yet it works so well.
It does. It's an unconventional format, but the drivers enjoy it. The viewers, I believe, the viewers would enjoy it. It's just everything meshes so well to bring this type of racing to us. And yes, it's unconventional, but it's fun. It's enjoyment. Yeah. Everybody seems to enjoy it. Everybody loves the suspense and the surprise of the schedule. Nobody knows where they're heading to or what they're driving. And just adding that little bit of suspense, also with the leveling of the playing field by doing that, brings some spectacular racing here throughout the races.
And with warm-up drawing itself to a close, we're only moments away then from getting ourselves back out on circuit for racing action. 18 more minutes back onto the clock, and Alblasser and Ugran round off the front row for the grid. Of course, it's basically what we just had flipped on its head. Top 18, we go again. There's the Austrian and the Romanian alongside ahead of Florian Startman. Ivan Ferrari, row 2. Markino Jordanovski, Jens Fidler on row 3 ahead of Gustavo Xavier and Florian Becker, row 4. Christoph Steiner and Hendrik Sturer, the top 10, Harry Marius Zug and Sean Ter in 11th and 12th place. Of course, beyond that, we've got the likes of course, Robert Heger in 13th, just in behind. Plenty of Germans to fill up the field there. You can see the rest of them alongside Maximilian Paul, Hugo Robb, Niels Langveld, Mirko Bortolotti and Hendrik Augustin, the 2 winners of course so far this evening. Stefano Pellegrino, Jan Lintz, the top 20, Yannick Vollenberg, Walter Lux, Michael Dillinger, Thomas Pieber and Marcus Riemer, the 25th and final car to take to the field. We're back underway once again. The five lights will come on, the five lights will go out, and we are underway for the final time this evening. A great start from the back of the field, but let's see how the situation is going to shake itself up at the front. Markino Jordanovski already up 3 places going into turn number 1 in that BMW M4 GT3 machine into the first braking zone, and there's absolute calamity. The Ferrari of Startman goes sailing across the circuit sideways, rejoins of course in absolutely no control of his vehicle, losing the rear end of the car, and it's complete turmoil. The BS competition car, I believe, of course, of Philippe Legrand, I think potentially, oh no, the Porsche in fact of Sturer just in the background. Not the way that they would have wanted to start this race by any stretch of the imagination, and cars are absolutely everywhere trying to battle through each and every single corner of this circuit. Marius Zuk, I should say, for the BS Plus competition Porsche there in 8th place, but well, calamity, carnage and mayhem to start off the lap.
And I must say, I might have thought about that might be the case when you got the faster cars start behind the slower cars with the flip of the field. But it also depends. Sometimes I'm ones that are at the back try to force their way to the front as well. As we see, who is that without the rear end of the car? He's like, I don't need that anymore. I can drive it just as well without it.
Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, if it's not affecting the geometry of the car or affecting any of the suspension, you can by all means get away with it. And maybe causing a little bit more drag, but rate reduction in the day, I suppose. Yeah, as long as you don't feel it as such, you can get away with it. However, unfortunately, I don't think he is, considering he's lost the complete rear end of the car, plus the rear wing, and while that car probably would go fairly quick in a straight line, I don't really think it's going to be doing much more than that. So into the pit lane, a fairly fairly sizable job for the Ferrari mechanics as they reattach the rear bumper and the rear wing in very good time. Fast repair taken to effect, back out onto the circuit. Christian Alblasser then still leads ahead of Ivan Ferrari, Jens Fiedler, Markino Jordanovski, and of course Sean Ter, the top 5. Very good start from those guys in their own right, and also very close the entirety of the top 4 in this fight for first. A bit of carnage further back. I think Jan Lintz has gone off in that Lamborghini Huracan Evo 2. Then you've also got the Audi R8 here of Hendrik Augustin, only up 3 places compared to Mirko Bortolotti, already on the fringes of the top 10.
He's on the verge of the top 10, and I'm trying to figure out if they have teammates or not, because we've got a few cars that are painted similar. I'm wondering if they're teams or if that's just the way that they're helping sponsor the league. I'm not exactly sure which.
Not entirely sure, I'll be honest. Well, that's the thing with both things, to be fair. I'm not entirely sure as to their intentions. Of course, potentially representing their own esports team or whatever, similar to what we have with Marius Zog representing BS Plus competition. In fact, that livery that I was talking about a little bit earlier on with the zebra stripes, of course, a very, very successful team and a very, very strong livery at that. So not only do they win, they also look good while doing it, which is always half of the battle. We're 3.5 minutes in and already having an influx of people into the pit lane, having a very short first stint, it must be said. But it's Ferrari in a Ferrari leading the way up 3 places as of yet. I mean, we'll wait and see, of course, if that's going to be the case after pit stops and things. But the entirety of the top 6, nose to tail, fighting for position. However, these GT3 cars very wide, Oran Park not so much, makes overtaking ever so slightly trickier, but doesn't mean that Jordanovsky and Paul aren't going to give us a good little battle.
No, we're getting great battling going on here through the top 6. And going back to Ferrari out front, would you, with a name like Ferrari, would you be driving anything other than a Ferrari? I mean, really, I'd be surprised if you picked a different car.
Ferrari and a BMW makes sense, really, doesn't it? It wouldn't. Of course, he's got to go in a Ferrari. It's in his name. It's the Italian heritage, and he's running really strongly out in front. I have to say that Porsche looks very VRS Coanda-esque, or Porsche Coanda, I should say, with the black and white split down the middle. By the way, it looks very, very nice. And representing his respective team, of course, the Your Moment Racing. Your is in like the angle, the direction of lateral movement, not the Your is in your car. Just thought I'd clarify that. It's spelled Y-A-W for Christian Ablasser. Maybe it means something different in Austrian, but in English, that 71. Don't know how they say drift in Austrian, but well, that definitely was that for Maximilian Paul in his Audi R8. But he's managed to hold it well, in fairness to him. No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
I was going to say, you spoke too soon. He is holding it fairly well through that first mishap, but unfortunately, I think the dirt and the grass got up into them tires enough that it didn't help him at all, and lost the grip there on that racing surface.
Yeah, once the tyres had overheated, I think at that point they were very difficult to bring back into an operating temperature window. Very easy to then subsequently spin again once you have already spun once. Dirty tyres, as I say, hot surface temperature as well, and that big gradient in between the surface temperature and the internal carcass temperature doesn't lend itself well to sort of having grip as such. A fantastic video with Sulia Almeida, I think his name is, coaching Alberto Nasca on iRacing. Really goes into depth about the internal carcass temperature as opposed to the surface temperature of the tyre, and how that affects the grip and how you can really better that with some braking techniques. And well, that was a prime example of overheating the tyres, overdriving the car, and then trying to expect grip a little bit too quickly after having the grass and as I say, heat get into the, or onto the tyre I should say more accurately. Fiedler leads ahead of Ivan Ferrari, who is into the pit lane. Jordanovsky as well, 4th and 5th as it stands for those two, so they'll be coming in for their mandatory pit stop, which, well, we were right, kind of. I guess we took a bit of a stab in the dark in regards to the mandatory stop of this race. Alblasser then into 2nd, but all in all, I think the strategy really spicing things up, and in fairness, these drivers very, very close on pace.
They're very, very close on times. Definitely giving us some great racing, some great outlook here going around over in Park. Like I said, this is a fun track. I really enjoy the track, and the drivers are really showcasing their skill. Really trying to keep that momentum up, and I think that's the biggest key to road racing is the momentum. Without the momentum, you're not going to be one of the quickest. So you're always searching for the line with the most momentum for you to run, or at least that's what I'm thinking. You know, or what I've been told anyway. Road racing is such a momentum style of racing, so you got a different skill set there instead of what I'm used to with the oval and dirt oval stuff. There, you got a little bit different driver skill set that's needed for road racing.
Oh, entirely. I mean, each discipline demands its own skill set. Whether you're doing endurance racing, in which case consistency and racecraft are really important. I suppose that is important in any discipline, but more so in endurance racing, especially that strategical decision making. Whereas opposed to sort of sprint racing, it's more cutthroat, merciless, intense racing that you're going to need to get. So raw pace maybe takes precedence. Then you get to sort of rallycross and stage rally, where car control and adaptability are so important. Then of course to sort of ovals and NASCAR, sort of more familiar to you. It's not as easy as just turning left for 2 hours. Trust me, it's not. I know it's so easy for drivers to get to. So many people are just like, well, you're just turning left. what is so difficult about that? And I was like, yeah, to be fair, you know, they're right. And then I get into iRacing, and I just get into an entry-level oval car, and I'm like, hang on a minute, this is pretty hard. Like, you have to keep your tyres in check, you have to think the long game, you have to run so close to the car in front while driving so quickly without running into the back of them, trying to manage your fuel, manage your tyres, as I said, be consistent. It is not as easy as most people make it out to be. Such a difficult discipline that demands, as I say, its own sort of cutthroat skill set, as we touched on. So each discipline demands different things, and especially in a format as randomized as this one that touches on so many different aspects of driving styles across the multitude of different car types that we've got, that adaptability to very quickly travel across disciplines is one that very much will be rewarded in bucketloads. You know, similar to the likes of course Bortolotti, you know, our champion leader, for example. He's so able to just go from car to car and not really think too much about it.
No, and he's done very well adapting to the series, adapting to the circuits that we're running on. It's definitely showing his ability to adapt and overcome the adversities of the changing formats and the changing cars, tracks, circuits, whatever. However, he's doing a great job. And if you don't look too far behind him, you've got the other one that's not doing too bad here as well. It is Hendrick.
Yeah, no, of course, our winner from race 1, showcasing again some really strong pace. Still 7 minutes 20 left to go. But yeah, can't take anything away from the 99 machine. Driven a fairly flawless race so far. Kept Bortolotti honest. Let's see. Of course, with still plenty of pit stops yet to come in, how they're going to get on with...
Looks like there's 3 drivers that have not yet pitted. We got 2 that are in now.
So, yeah, to be fair, not many then.
No. We got 1 more driver that's looking, and here he comes now. So everybody's done their pit stop.
Awesome stuff. Everyone's in then. This means it is just purely a sprint to the finish. And these drivers are going to have to be very mindful of the fact that, well, they're now settling into their final positions to the end of this race. And they're going to have to fight tooth and nail for each and every single one of those positions on track. Bortolotti and Augustine 12th and 13th from where they started, which, to be fair, is not a bad effort considering how tight and twisty Oran Park can be.
No, they're doing a great job of being up 8 spots from where they started the second half of this race. Definitely have to overcome where they finished to where they started. And as we see, Augustine's really there, really hoping Mirko is going to make a mistake somewhere so he can capitalize on that position.
I think so. I think that's sort of the name of the game that you have to have, is, you know, being able to capitalise. And people say, you know, well, XYZ got really lucky with you know, how they finished that race. And I say to them, well, why were they the ones that were lucky? Why wasn't it anyone else on the field? How did this driver do XYZ differently? Like that small mistake there from Bortolotti, and immediately on the attack is Augustine to pull alongside. We've got the 2 race winners, the only 2 people to finish on top in a feature race side by side, heading their way towards the kink. And then, of course, the heavy braking zone into turn number 2 is the Audi R8 that leads them in for 12th place. Augustine benefiting off the mistake from the Italian, and up now into 12th place with just 5 minutes left to go in race number 2. But yeah, back to the point, of course, why were they the ones that were lucky? Why were they the ones that put themselves in that position? Could have been anyone else. Say if the leader spun out and crashed, why were they the ones in second? Because they were the ones that put themselves there, because they did the strategy, they were consistent, they were quick, and then when it came down to it, they were able to deliver under pressure and be the lucky one. So yeah, there is luck involved in winning anything, across any discipline, across any sport, across any field, any industry. There is luck involved, but it's how you use that luck. And unfortunately for Ronenberg, he's not got a lot of it. Neither, unfortunately, I don't think has the other Ferrari 296. Talking about luck, and as I say, that is just plain unlucky.
Yeah, I'm surprised that car's still running. I mean, that was a hard hit.
It yeah, really was. Fairly sizable whack, if you will, but able to continue on, I suppose, to at least some extent.
Looks like he's going down into the pits for some repairs on that Ferrari. Now, this one that is out front right now, he pitted on lap 1, so he was one of the first ones into the pits. And is out front by almost 2.5, a little over 2.5 seconds. I'd have to say it's a pretty good strategy call out on his part to get him out into that type of position. And that's going back to that, you're speaking about luck. Well, I don't know if there is luck involved, but there's also some skill set and some understanding of the track layouts. And to lend itself into some strategy calls. I mean, when you're thinking about it, when you're trying to get track positions, that whole pit stop strategy plays such a big role in trying to pick up positions. As we see for Marius, I think that's how you say it, during this Porsche. Great job, putting himself in position right now with 2.5 minutes to go.
Very much so. Of course, fielding the BS Plus competition livery. As I say, you can't blame me for saying that's one of the best looking liveries in sim racing, especially on the Porsche. You usually see it on the BMW, but it looks equally as good as on that Porsche. 2 laps left to go then, as he crosses the line. And split livery down the side, of course, with the very iconic zebra stripes in that BS Plus competition. And the only driver to really be fielding a big name in terms of an esports. So that pressure definitely there for Marius Zug, running really nicely with it. Sean Terr fighting with Blaster, of course, as it stands, the silver race winner in that 998 machine. Up the inside goes Sean Terr, and up into 7th place. There goes also Hugo Robb into 8th place, fighting with the Porsche, who's now going to be in a bit of a drag race with him towards the next turning point. It's going to be a Blast that takes it, but then also look at Hendrik Augustin getting involved. He sails his way the long way around, potentially having a bit of a look to stay side by side with Hugo Robb. He's going to do it once again. The agility of that Audi R8 is astonishing. And now it's going to be a case of who can put their foot to the floor first as they rise over the bridge. Inside line once again for the Ferrari. But the 99 has got no intention of backing down just yet into the next corner. Slight downhill decline. And the Audi R8 just missing out on this particular occasion. But Robb and Augustin going at it toe to toe. What a race.
What a race indeed. And I do not see that 99 giving up as they head here onto the front stretch here of Orman Park. He's right there. He's just waiting for his chance to strike. And there he goes. He's going to the inside here, coming down. Does not quite get there, I guess, but he is up against that bumper. We're just waiting for the chance to get around.
Yeah, just searching for an opportunity, really. Ferrari and Higa fighting over 4th as well. 30 seconds left on the clock. I think we might just be able to scrape one more lap out of this. Yes, we will. In fact, where are they on the lap? I don't actually know. It's going to be close. Yeah, this is now into the final corner. 15 to go. I think we are going to get one more lap out of it. Marius Zug, I should say. That's a G, not a K. 7.65. Where's the line? There it is. One more lap then left to go here in Orman Park. Of course, for week 2 of season 6 of the W12 Sprint Series, and we're going to get 3 feature race winners. Of course, technically this is well, the first race was a sprint race, I suppose, so this is technically our second feature race winner. Sorry, Augustin, but that technically doesn't count. I'm joking. Still a staple race winner, and of course our heat winners as well. We had Hugo Robb winning heat number 1 for the, or heat number 2, I should say, for the evens. And then the consolation race winner of Niels Langveld as well, who at the moment is only sat 18th after finishing on the podium in race 1 here for session 2. But overall, it's been a good evening.
Been a good evening indeed, as we're wrapping up here from Orman Park with, is that, how do you say that name? Marius Zug or something.
Yeah, Mariusz Zug in the BS Plus competition car, rounding the final corner now, by the way. The headlights are on, and he's going to be the first one to see the checkered flag. He weaves victorious. Of course, flash the headlights in celebration. The 66 machine across the line, becoming our third, well, technically fifth big-time race winner for this evening. And etching himself into the history books, of course, and scoring maximum points for the feature race of Session 2. In fairness, a very strong race. Dealt with it perfectly in the reverse grid.
It was definitely exciting to watch. I really enjoyed it, and congrats to Marius there for his win. Just waiting for the results to come up here. Got a few more drivers that I think still have to cross the line. Just waiting for the results to pop up here for us to be able to read down through them. But for my first time here with this series, I found it very, very enjoyable.
Well, after 18 minutes of racing action, Mariusz Zug, Jens Fiedler and Florian Becker, the top three in the final race of the evening. Ivan Ferrari, Markino Jordanovski, the top five ahead of Sean Ter, Robert Higa, Hugo Robb, Hendrik Augustin, and Mirko Bortolotti making their way into the top 10. Really strong race, it must be said, from the German and the Italian. Christian Ablasa just missing out on a top 10 ahead of Gustavo Xavier, Michael De Linga, Stefano Pellegrino, I should say, Jan Lintz, the top 15 ahead of Christoph Steiner, Yannick Vonenberg, Niels Langveld, Philip Ogran, Maximilian Paul, the top 20. Beyond that, just a couple of cars, but none of them unfortunately making it to the checkered flag. Of course, there you can see Henrik Steuer, Florian Startman, Walter Lutz, Thomas Piebert, and then of course Marcus Riemer as well, rounding off the 25 car field that we've got here this evening. All in all, I have to say, Adam, it was a very enjoyable experience and a very strong welcome to the series.
It was a very, very welcoming start to this series for us. This was my first race with the series, as well as I think it was your first race
Yep.
as well. So definitely for a first time, and for somebody that doesn't get a lot of road racing experience, this was definitely an experience I enjoyed and wouldn't mind coming back again.
No, definitely not. I think we have actually got a driver waiting in the interview room, so we'll drag in Mariusz Zug, of course, representing BS Plus competition. Well, not a bad final race, it must be said for you, Marius.
Yeah, to be honest, I think I worried the most about the start, but that gone quite well, and then I could pit early and kind of do my laps on my own, so that was quite kind of smooth.
Yeah, it was a really strong race, in fairness, and obviously it's a bit of an unconventional format for the W12 Sprint Series. Obviously, the randomization sort of format for it must be awkward if you haven't got the content on iRacing, but I'm sure that probably might not be a problem for you. But also, just more from a driving perspective, how are you finding having to very quickly adapt from car to car?
To be honest, I like it quite a lot because then there is not a lot of, let's say, differences in preparations. To my taste, we could even shorten up the practices a bit to make it a bit more spicy, but yeah, in general, I definitely like the idea of just doing it random.
And I suppose in that vein, how do you prepare for this evening? I mean, the dates. You kind of know to an extent the cars that you could be driving. Are you just going out there in every single possible car trying to get a feel for it, or are you just getting into the session and seeing how it goes?
For me, I mean, I think I'm quite a lot in the sim anyways. So for me, it's more or less just see what comes and then go, because most of the cars, as you already pointed out, I already own most of them. So I've driven, I think, the most of cars that are possible to get drawn. I mean, for sure, the Clio Cup and so on are a bit less familiar for me, so there I struggle a bit more, but the GT3s, GTEs, and so on are quite familiar for me.
Which is fair because they are fairly well used sort of discipline in iRacing, a very easy car as well to get into and sort of, I suppose, get a feel for. But all in all, a very successful evening for you, Marius, it must be said. But obviously, going forward, what are your aspirations? Of course, you got the win here today for the final race of the evening. I mean, surely the plan is for more.
I'd say so. I mean, I always am a bit afraid of Server 1, as I mentioned, because of the, let's say, a bit more crazy or out of the ordinary cars. But definitely Server 2 is what I'm always looking forward a bit more. So yeah, definitely looking for more on basically on both servers, but I think it's a bit more likely on Server 2 for me.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you very much, of course, for joining us in the commentary booth, Marius. And once again, a very big congratulations for your success this evening. Before we let you go, is there any shout-outs, anyone you want to give thanks to?
Not particularly. I think, to be honest, from what I've experienced today, it's been quite a nice run throughout all the evening. So definitely better than the first event we had on Monday regarding crashes overall, I'd say. So that's definitely an improvement for everyone.
Awesome stuff, Marius. Well, thank you very much once again for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you back in a few days' time.
Yep, thanks. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Marius. Of course, our race 2 winner this evening. Seems optimistic, seems happy, and seems to be quite a big fan of the format, Adam.
He is a fan of it, which I think for most of these drivers, they would be a fan of the format because it definitely puts their skills to the test. Jumping from car to car, jumping from track to track, it definitely will put their skill sets to the test to figure out, okay, I'm good here. I know that this car feels this way, but this car is going to feel this way. They might know a little bit heading in, but they won't know exactly, which really throws them for a loop. I as well as, do they know the time of day even? I mean, that plays a factor in the way cars handle as well.
Right, exactly, yeah. I mean, temperature and things like that will always have a big factor in things. So it's a tricky format to get sort of used to. And of course, it's quite high frequency as well. I didn't know that, in fact, it was a race every few days and not as opposed to sort of a round every week. Very quick format, ending, of course, in just over a month's time on the 19th of February. Of course, we've got week 2. It goes all the way to round 6, effectively. So quite high intensity. They've got to be on their toes, got to be feeling fresh in the sim because it's sink or swim in such a high performance, high intensity environment like these guys have got in there today. But unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring an end to our coverage of the W12 Season 6. Of course, week number 2. Well, day number 2, I suppose, more accurately, here on January the 12th. We'll be back in a few days' time, January the 15th, for the halfway point of the season. My name has been Zach Sween. I've had Adam Flieger alongside me in the commentary booth. We thank you all for watching at home, and until next time, it's goodbye for now.